So we have come to the 21st chapter of Revelation. Revelation chapter 21, verses 1 to 8.
Revelation chapter 21. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, Behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain any more, for the former things have passed away. And he who was seated on the throne said, Behold, I am making all things new. Also he said, Write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true. And he said to me, It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty I will give from the spring of the water of life without payment. The one who conquers will have this heritage, and I will be his God, and he will be my son. But as for the cowardly, the faithless, the detestable, as for the murderers, the sexually immoral, sorcerers, idolaters, and all the liars, their portion will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death.
Thank you. One of the earliest books written in the Bible is the book of Job. And there are a lot of intriguing statements, though it is a private discussion between friends trying to come to console one of their friends. It gives us insight into the thinking of the early world. What were they thinking? What were they discussing? What were their thoughts? And many great truths, both spiritual and truths that concerned the earth, were discussed during that private discussion. Now, one of the questions that was in the minds of people as early as those who lived at the time of Job was this question that is found in the book of Job, chapter 14, verse 14. One of you please read. This is one of the questions that they had in their mind. And this is not their own question, the question of people who lived throughout the ages. Okay, let us listen to that.
If a man dies, shall he live again?
Okay.
All.
Thank you. If a man dies, will he live again? This was not a question that is asked in the 21st century. This was a question that was asked many thousands of years back of people who had lived as early. Many scholars think that Job was a contemporary of Abraham. So think of the time that these people were living and think of the question that they had in their mind. Will man live after he die again? What answer do we give? Do we have the secular people, if you go and ask any of your colleagues or friends, will man live again after they die? What answer do they give? Because most of them, they will feign ignorance because they do not know. They are not sure because no one they know has gone to that other world and come back and told us whether there is life there or not. So at best, they will say, if we don't know, maybe, may not be, we just cannot say, we cannot be sure. Some people say, yeah, something that they read in their books. But if you read in the Bible throughout, you will see beautiful confidence of people who died or were about to die. They were so confident about what is going to happen. They just walked into the death as if they are just crossing from one room to another. Let me give you a couple of examples from the first book of the Bible. Now, when God dealt with man, we read that we understand that man rebelled against God, and then we see the God's judgment coming up in the 7th chapter through the universal flood. And after that, again, he saw this family of Noah. Again, he saw that people were again slipping back to that old style of idolatry and immorality and all that. So God decided to choose one man, Abraham, and started to reveal to him his plan, and that he will make a great nation out of him. And slowly, God is trying to speak to him. It's called a friend of God, a person who had very, very close fellowship or association with God. And this man, he waited for 100 years to receive the promise of God, and he saw how marvelously that God provided for him. And he did not own anything. He was so confident that God will fulfill his promises, that he approached his death and never worried about the unfulfilled promises. Certain promises were fulfilled with respect to his son, but he did not see that his son became a very great nation. No, he didn't see that. He did not see that that whole land which was promised to him was realized. No, he didn't. Many of those future things that God said about himself, about the number of people that his descendants will become and the land will be theirs and so on, many of them were unfulfilled when he dies. But you know what the Bible says when he died? I'd like to take you to that place. Very beautiful words spoken about the last, how Abraham died. Chapter 26. Genesis chapter 26, verse 7 and 8.
And
the men of the place asked him about his wife, he said, "She's my sister."
Oh, sorry, 25. I'm sorry, 25. My Bible. Yeah. Genesis 25, verse 7 and 8. Yeah.
These are the days of the years of Abraham's life, 175 years. Abraham breathed his last and died in a good old age, an old man and full of years, and was gathered to his people.
Did you notice how the scripture explains the death of this man? It says he died of good old, ripe old age. He died. But then one little phrase is added to that. That is, he was gathered to his people. Now, what is this phrase? Gathered to his people. Who's his people? What do you mean by gathering to his people? Now, this is the understanding that even though the understanding of God and afterlife and all so limited at that time, this patriarch who lived closely with God, who lived as a friend of God, he's gathered to his people. Who are his people? His relatives? His father? Or no. Obviously talking about those who lived with God. Enoch, for example, walked with God, and God took him. He couldn't see him. Here is a man who lived his life in faith. He had his own faults and failures, but he had always looking forward to that place. And what do we understand about Abraham's faith about afterlife? Now we need to put together pieces from here and there in order to get the complete picture, because many of the Old Testament truths are enlightened by New Testament revelation, understanding. Okay, some of these great truths I picked up, by reading those commentary, so as to say, given by the New Testament authors. Now, there were three of the first three patriarchs mentioned always: Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, we know that these three patriarchs, God always associates when he introduces to Moses and others. He says, "I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and and Jacob." And when you come to the New Testament, we read that they were partakers of the promise. Now let me take you to Hebrews, the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, where the Hebrew writer is mentioning about the list of heroes of faith. So it's a big, beautiful, fine list. Okay, in that list, there are a lot of people from Abel onwards, and Enoch and Noah and all the rest of them. And when you come to the place where Abraham is mentioned, it's good to read. Interesting. What does this Hebrews writer is telling about Abraham? From verse 8 onwards, Hebrews chapter 11, verse 8.
By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he would receive as an inheritance, and he went out, not knowing where he was going. By faith, he dwelt in the land of promise, as in a foreign country, dwelling in tents with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. For he waited for the city which has foundations, whose builder and maker is God. By faith.
Yeah, okay, that's enough. Now, if you read this commentary or these words, the Hebrews writer, few things will come to light. One, those who are physical descendants of Abraham, they were not the heirs of promise. They did not share in the promise. For example, we know Ismail was a physical descendant, but he did not share. Esau was a physical descendant of Isaac. He did not share. So that beautiful word, faith, comes into play here. Those who believed in the promises given to them by God, even though they were not realized, they were called heirs. They are the people, those who are going to inherit the promises. Even though there were other physical descendants who could have, but they did not, because they did not share the promise and they did not have the faith. It's very, very noteworthy to think that these three people, even though this promise was given to them, the land was promised, they were rich, they did not buy a single piece of land in Palestine. Why? They could have. In fact, people who were much less wealthier than them, they had bought houses, like, for example, Lot. But Abraham did not. Abraham, the only piece of property that he had was the burial place. Why didn't he buy the land? Why didn't Isaac was very rich in that land? Why didn't he buy a land? Why didn't Jacob, with all his, he knew that promise that was made to Abraham is an everlasting promise. And that does not just stop by this petty little land, piece of land that I'm going to have here. It is of eternal nature. And that is why this commentary is very interesting. It is looking forward to the future. What is he telling about the future? By faith, he sojourned in the land of promise as in a strange country, dwelling in tabernacles with Isaac and Jacob. You remember, Isaac was a son, and Jacob with respect to Jacob, it is still he was a tent dweller. If you go and look at the age of Abraham when he died, and the age of Isaac when he died, and when Jacob and Esau was born, Jacob and Esau were 15 years old when Abraham died. That means here he gives an insight that Jacob understood the promises directly from Abraham, his grandfather. While his brother was so busy going out and hunting, Jacob was a tent dweller. That's what the New Testament tells us. Here he says he lived in tent along with the whom? Fellow heirs. The fellow heirs of the same promise. How did Jacob become a fellow heir? How did Isaac become a fellow heir? Because they believed what was promised to them. What was promised? Through faith. For he looked for a city, verse 10, which had foundations, whose builder and maker is God. That promise that Abraham received was not just an earthly promise. It was a heavenly promise, because what did they look? In fact, if they had looked for an earthly promise of a piece of land upon the coast of Mediterranean, they would have been disappointed because they did not get it. Abraham did not get it. Isaac did not get it. Jacob did not get it. But why were they not disappointed? Why were they so confident and happy? Because they were looking for a city which has foundations, whose builder and maker is God. Now, my friends, why did I take so much of time on this? Because this city that they were looking forward to was their ultimate destination, was their joy, was their longing, not anything of temporal nature. That was the reason why they were able to step into the other world and say they were gathered to his people. What do we read about the end of Jacob? Please read Genesis chapter. Which chapter talks about the death of the book of Genesis? I think it is in the 49th chapter, right? Yes, 49th chapter and verse 33.
And when Jacob had made an end of commanding his sons, he gathered up his feet into the bed and died, and was gathered unto his people.
You see, that same thing told about Abraham is also said about Jacob. That after he said all this, as if he is now ready. Okay, now I'm ready to go. He lifted his leg, kept it on that cot, and now he said, okay, with what confidence that he moved into the other world. Genesis chapter 35 verse 29 about Isaac. verse 29. Yes.
So Isaac breathed his last and died, and was gathered to his people.
See that? Consistently, those people, those patriarchs who were heirs of the promise, their death was mentioned in a consistent way, that they had gathered to his people. So what do we gather from all this? Is that they knew where they were going. They knew, and they looked not to an earthly city, but they looked for a city which has foundations, whose builder and maker is God. They were looking to a particular city, a particular place where their people, their own, not the physical blood relations, but those who believed and longed for God, who believed in the promises of God, which is an eternal God. And they were so eager to go up to them. And many years later, after the death of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, when God came to introduce himself to the people of Israel, he's using a very astonishing introduction. What is that introduction? He's not saying, I am the God who is the creator of the universe. I am the one who is the Alpha and the Omega. No. He's using a very peculiar introductory formula. What is that? He says, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, I had a friend whose name was Matthew Chan. No, we call him Matthew Chan. He died some 10 years back. Very good, nice friend of mine. We used to do ministry together. And one day, he had a silent heart attack and there he was gone. I miss him. But when I refer to him, what do I call him? I would say Matthew Chan was my friend, right? I was a friend of Matthew Chan. I would always use that in the past tense. Right? I would always refer to him because he is dead and gone. And doctors got this euphemism when to proclaim death. You will say to the son who was standing next to the father who just died, maybe the doctor will say, your father was a good man. When you say that your father was a good man, what he's saying is your father is gone. Your father is dead. Because you don't use past tense about a living man, right? If he's alive, you will say your father is a good man. When you say your father was a good man, that means your father is dead, sir. Is another way of saying, without really telling that bluntly, that your father is dead. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. So when God brought this kind of introductory formula, many of them questioned this. Like what? What are you talking about? But then when you come to the New Testament, into the Matthew's Gospel, this question of life after death was discussed. These people tried to trap him by bringing in this hypothetical situation of a woman marrying a man, and then he died, and his brother married her, and all that kind of hypothetical question. And it says, finally, whose wife? So they were trying to discredit that the condition that in resurrection. What if you're talking about resurrection? Because Sadducees did not believe in resurrection. So what did our Lord do? Lord is going back to the Old Testament. He's going back to the Old Testament, and is referring to this incident that happened in Exodus chapter 3. Let's go there. Matthew's Gospel, chapter 22 and verse 31 and 32. Matthew's Gospel, chapter 22. Yes.
But concerning the resurrection of the dead,
yeah, so he's talking about the resurrection of the dead. Concerning the resurrection of the dead, yeah, go on, brother.
Have you not read what was spoken to you by God, saying, I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob? And God is...
Yes, go on.
God is not God of the dead, but of the living.
So, what is happening here? He is introducing, he's introducing himself to Moses, and he's quoting from there. As I am the God of Abraham. Just like I told you the example about my friend Matthew Chan. I would say, I was the friend of Matthew Chan. No. God is telling, I am. Present tense. How many of us have noticed when we read the Old Testament that God was talking about that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are living in my presence? That means when he is using present tense, he is telling them, even though these patriarchs had died hundreds of years earlier, there must be life after death. Otherwise, how can I speak as if they are alive in the present tense? So even when we read through the pages of the Old Testament, it's so refreshing to realize that Old Testament patriarchs were confident. And God was telling those people who did not have any connection with those patriarchs, telling them, look, even though your forefather Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, they have dead and gone for many years, never forget that I am their God. Not I was their God. They're living in my presence. They have gathered to my people and they are in my presence. And that gives us a lot of confidence. And there is life after death. That question that been asked in the book of Job, is there life after death? Will man live after that he die? And the answer is a resounding yes. Yes. They're gathered to my people. They're in my presence. I am their God. So, what about Psalms? When you read Psalms, he had a confidence when the psalmist writing. A couple of examples may be able to help us. Psalms 23. It's a well-known psalm that we all know, but the psalmist ends that beautiful little psalm, verse 6, 23, verse 6.
Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Psalmist David, the sweet singer of Israel, ending this beautiful psalm by saying, I will live in the house of the Lord forever. I am not going to be a disembodied spirit floating around in different places as many religions tell today. I am going to live in the house of the Lord forever. Though they had this idea of rest, they had this idea of being gathered to their people, they always had this expectation that they are going to live in the house of the Lord forever. Another Psalm, Psalm 17 and verse 15. Psalm 17 and 15, verse 15.
As
As
for
for
me, I will be
Yeah, read.
As for me, I will behold your face in righteousness. I shall be satisfied when I awake with your likeness.
And psalmist not only talking about getting up in the morning, he is now looking forward to that glorious awakening. And he's saying that I will be satisfied when I awake with what? With your countenance, with your presence. മലയാളത്തില് ഞാൻ ഉണരുമ്പോൾ നിന്റെ രൂപം കണ്ട് തൃപ്തനാകും. I will be so full and satisfied by beholding your likeness. Isn't that an amazing thing? So the Old Testament saints, when they died or when they were approaching their end, they were so confident about what is going to happen, even though they had little revelation. What do we read about Daniel, beloved person in the sight of God? God is telling Daniel in the last chapter, he was trying to understand what is going to happen, the last days, the number of days, and how that God is going to unravel things. He said, go on, these things are all sealed. And finally the book of Daniel, with all its complex prophetic utterances, ends with this beautiful little comfort for Daniel. Daniel chapter 12, verse 13.
But you go your way till the end, for you shall rest and will arise to your inheritance at the end of the days.
Daniel was troubled about what is going to happen in the last days, but says, Daniel, don't worry about that. These are all sealed for the last days. But then you go, and in the end, you will come. Now, so what do we understand about death? Death, we saw from the life of patriarchs that they were gathered to his people. They are with the company of saints. That is one thing we understand. Second thing is that in a sense, they are not dead. They are alive in the presence of God. Though they don't have a body, they are alive. That is why God is able to say that I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The third thing that we understand is it is a condition of rest. Rest does not mean lack of consciousness. Okay, so for example, when you take rest, it does not mean that you are completely gone. You are not worried. You are taking rest. It's a place of comfort. When we come to the New Testament, while talking about a glimpse that Jesus gives about life after death in that story of Lazarus and the rich man, we see the picture of Abraham, father there. And he's telling a little cute thing about Lazarus. Now he is comforted. You are tormented. He's talking about the rich man. And he is telling about Lazarus that he is comforted. So, life after death for a believer is a company. He'll be with the company of saints. He will be resting and he will be comforted. Okay, he'll be comforted. It's a place of comfort. And one other important aspect that we also know, we will be with the company of the saints, but Paul says to depart and be with whom? Which one? Book of Romans, I think, right? Romans, is it Romans? Can one of you help me take that verse? I think it is in Philippians chapter. Yeah, chapter 1, verse 23. Philippians chapter 1, verse 23.
But I am hard pressed from both directions, having the desire to depart and be with Christ, for that is very much better.
So Paul is discussing, what do I do? Shall I continue and minister to you, or just go and meet? These are two alternatives in front of him. What shall I choose now? I'm pressed because of these two options. He says, I would like to go to Christ. So in that two options, he's telling that for me to live is Christ and to die is gain. Oh, that is an amazing statement, actually. He's saying, for me to live is Christ and to die is gain. So living for him means Christ. And dying means it is gain. For example, let me tell you, suppose there is a very smart and intelligent young man who was raised to the rank of the CEO of the company. When he was just 30, he was so brilliant, and he rose to the very high rank the CEO of a company because of his ability and his intelligence and his foresight and so on. And he's very well on his way to the very high, to be the president of a group of companies, and very, very bright future. And suddenly one day he died in an accident. And the company will say his death is a great loss. Correct? All people will say. Those who know him, he's a good man, or his death is a great loss. They will never say that his death is gain. They will always refer to him as a loss. But Paul is telling absolutely opposite. He says, my death is a gain. How my death is a gain? People of this world will consider the death as a loss, but you are considering your death as a gain. How? He's telling, look, why my death is gain is because to depart and be with Christ. That is the reason why my death is a gain. Because I'm going to a better place and I'm going to be in the presence of Christ. So that gives us another angle to the whole thing. Even though we do not have body when we die, our body will have to leave. We are conscious and we will be in the presence of Christ. To depart and be with Christ. And that is the reason why Paul explains his death is a gain for him, because it is translating him into the very presence of his Savior and to be with the Lord all the time. So, piecing together the condition of a child of God. Okay? I'm talking about a child of God. After he dies, with what confidence that he could enter into his last days. With what confidence that he could face death. Old Testament saints said they gathered to their people, his people. They'll be the company of God's people. David was looking forward to see the presence of God. Daniel was given the assurance that it is a place of rest for you. There is no unrest. There's a lot of unrest going on in the beast kingdoms and so on. Nothing of the sort. You go and rest. Things will happen as it had been prophesied. You go rest. No one is going to disturb your rest. It's a place of rest. Paul talks about it as to depart and be with the Lord. Okay. Two words are used with respect to a believer's death. Okay. One, let me, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 and verse 13.
I do not want you to be ignorant, brethren, concerning those who have fallen asleep, lest you sorrow as others who have no hope.
Okay. So Bible talks about death as of a believer. Okay, it's talking about a believer here, of fallen asleep. That means sleep, we know, is a temporal situation. A person is going to sleep, he will not cry, he will not sorrow when he goes to bed, because he knows that sleep means it is temporal and they will be awakened. So the word that Bible New Testament uses is slept. So this again another phrase that is used, slept with the fathers. Right? Sleeping. So that means you will be awakened. Another word which is used to portray death is in 1 Corinthians chapter 15. And verse 42, 43.
So also is the resurrection of the dead. The body is sown in corruption. It is raised in incorruption. It is sown in dishonor. It is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness. It is raised in power.
Okay.
It is sown.
Yeah.
It is sown in natural body. It is raised a spiritual body. There is a natural body and there is a spiritual body.
Okay. So the second phrase that is used about death is sowing, right? You know, a farmer, when he's sowing a seed, he's not crying in the sense that he doesn't have that kind of a sorrow. I'm throwing away my seed. I'm losing it. No. He has got absolute confidence that when he is sowing this old seed, he's expecting a great harvest. He's expecting a return, a manifold return when he's sowing the seed. So there are two things that will happen when you sow. One, the quality of the matter that you get back is better than the one that you sow. And also the quantity that will come out of it, the abundance that come out of it, it's much higher than the one. You sow one seed and you see the abundance coming up in so in two ways you can understand it, is that this earthly life is limited, but we are going to get an unlimited kind of life in the future. The quality of this, with pain and sorrow and difficulties and all that, will be replaced by there is no death, there is no tears, there is no pain, no sorrow. So when you put all these things together, you will see that the future is a place where there are a company of God's people, a place where God has prepared a city with foundations whose maker is God, looking forward to a place where people of God can live forever. This was always the aim and the hope of the people of God. Even while reading the Psalms, you will see that they were looking forward to a place, a real place. It's not about an imaginary floating kind of thing. Let me give you a couple of examples. Psalms 68 verse 16. Psalm 68 verse 16.
Why do you look with envy, O mountains with many peaks, at the mountain which God has desired for his abode?
A mountain that God has desired for his abode. It says God will live in that mountain forever. Which mountain he's talking about? Which mountain that the psalmist is envisaging? That God is going to be there forever. So they were looking forward to a kind of a mountain where that God is going to be there and his habitation will be there all the time. All the time. Another example, Psalms 132 and verse 13 and 14.
The Lord has chosen Zion. He has desired it for his dwelling place. This is my resting place forever. Here I will dwell, for I have desired it.
He's talking about Zion, which is another word for Jerusalem. This is also called a mountain. And he says, this is my resting place. This is the place that I have chosen to be my dwelling place. So here they were all looking forward to a mountain, a place, a real place where God will make his habitation. God will make his abode forever. Another example, Psalms 24, verse 3 and 4.
Who may ascend into the hill of the Lord, and who may stand in his holy place? He who has clean hearts and a pure heart, who has not lifted up his soul to falsehood, and has not sown deceitfully.
Okay. Who will climb up to the mountain of God? Who will stand in his holy place? Only those people who got clean hands, clear hearts. Such people can go and live in that mountain. So if the Old Testament saints, even though they did not have all the clarity of that place, they always looked forward to that holy mountain, that Zion, which they named it. They were always, and this earthly Jerusalem, this place that they had, was only a pale prototype of that beautiful city that they had dreamt of, where God lived and where the presence of God was, where the company of the saints were, and people with clean hands could be there, and so on. So when we read through the Old Testament, we are fully engrossed by this great hope of God's people of the old. Read one more verse, Psalms 48, verse 1 and 2 and 3.
Great is the Lord and greatly to be praised in the city of our God, his holy mountain. Beautiful in elevation, the joy of the whole earth is Mount Zion in the far north, the city of the great King. God in our palaces has made himself known as a stronghold.
This city, Zion, Mount Zion, which is portrayed as a city of God, where God will make his habitation there. So, putting all these things together, that we see Abraham looking forward to that city, the psalmists, they were looking forward to that city. When we come to the New Testament, we see this disciples' heart was so worried that Jesus was going. For 3.5 years, they were with the Lord. They were so anxious now that his time is about to go. He's already told that I'm going to Jerusalem, and there I'm going to be arrested and killed and will be buried, but rise on the third day. So their hearts were worried. They were troubled now. Our master is going. What are we going to do? The Lord is trying to comfort them. It says, do not let your heart be troubled. Let's read that. John chapter 14. John 14 and verse 1 and 1 to 3.
Not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also.
Okay. So, here in New Testament language, our Lord is telling that I'm going. For what? To prepare a place. It is not just that we will be with the Lord. It is true that we will be with the Lord. It is true that we will be with the saints. But we are going to live in a real place. Jesus talks about that. Many mansions, a place God's people are going to be in a city. So this, there are different definitions. They're called mansions. They're called a city. They're called a mountain. They're called bride. When you come to that, we are going to study that. I'm just giving you a preface. We know the book of Ezekiel is another apocalyptic literature in the Old Testament, where prophecy is mentioned in visions and figures rather than in pronouncement. So when you read the book of Ezekiel, the last 8 chapters of Ezekiel is talking about far future. We went through from chapter 30 about the night visions, 6 night visions. And the final one was from the last chapters, where the conditions of millennium and after are mentioned. I want you to go and read those last 8 chapters. A beautiful explanation. And in fact, when John was writing Revelation, he is borrowing heavily from Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel. These 3 books are profusely quoted in the book of Revelation. And any student of Revelation ought to read these prophetic books of the Old Testament very clearly, closely, so that you will see the parallels. And Ezekiel, when he's concluding his book, come to the last chapter, he's talking about the explanation of that great city from verse 23 onwards. I'm not going to read all that. You'll see about all the tribes and all the gates and all the explanation of all that. And finally, there is a name given to that city. The beautiful city that Ezekiel is explaining about. That there is a name given to that city. What is that name? Verse 35. Ezekiel chapter 48 and verse 35.
All the way around shall be 18,000 cubits, and the name of the city from that day shall be, the Lord is there.
Hebrew, it is called Jehovah Shammah. Jehovah Shammah. The Lord is there. You see that? It is a real city. It is also called a mountain. It is Jesus saying different mansions. It is called the city of God, the city of the living God, heavenly Jerusalem, Mount Zion, holy city, and it's also called Jehovah Shammah, means God is there. And this is how John introduces the city to us. Behold, the tabernacle of God is among men. It is a city where the presence of God is in the very center. My friends, I want you to fill our hearts with this vision that we see throughout the scriptures about this great city that Abraham looked forward to, where David looked forward to, all the Old Testament looked forward to. Their song and their meditation upon that city of God, where God is there, Jehovah Shammah. This is a presence of God, a continuous presence of God in that city, where He is in the middle, where He is going to be the all in all of that city. And to such a city that God has promised to take those who believe in Him. Isn't that a comforting thought for us? I believe the Bible is ending with this beautiful description of the city. I want you to read and meditate on this. As we look into it, there are certain things that are there, certain things not there. A lot of things that we see in today's world is not there. No pain, no tears, no sorrow, no death. You read that list in that chapter 21 and 22. You will see many of those things that we expect to be there are not there. Many of the unexpected things are there. It is so amazing that God has unraveled these things right in front of our eyes, so that we may look forward and not be worried and been pulled down by the temporal disappointments that we are having upon this earth. May the Lord help us to fill our hearts with this great hope of that coming city, that coming King, where we are going to live with him. And that city is called Jehovah Shammah. Never forget that name. God is there. God is there all the time, continuously. And we are going to see him face to face. May the Lord help us as we continue to meditate on these things.